think there's some really harmful messaging out there about mental illness and how useful the drugs are. I think it's very unbalanced, and I think we only hear positive things and we don't hear important things. For instance, PSSD. You know, the fact that some people on antidepressants never regain their sexual functioning afterwards, and so that's kind of a roundabout answer. But yeah, I think there's a lot of really bad messaging about these drugs that drive people to,
yeah. And I was, you mentioned the politicians. I mean, I'm hearing this alliance between pharmaceutical companies, that Food and Drug Administration that authorizes them or approves these medications. I mean, there just seems to be a lot, these politicians that are passing legislation or endorsing or supporting. I mean, if you look at donations, I know you're again trying to say, they want to support these communities, which I'm sure that they do, but they also get donations from these corporations. I mean, we saw Pfizer donations, and we saw Johnson and Johnson donations, and Moderna donations, and politicians refusing to prosecute certain crimes against certain pharmaceutical companies. And later down the line, you're seeing that they're getting campaign contributions. So there is a lot of, and those are the individuals who are supposed to be keeping these companies accountable. So there seems to be a lot of conflicts of interest. And I think it's, personally, I think it's outrageous. As a lawyer, I think it's outrageous that these companies are able to advertise that they get celebrities to endorse their products. They don't give you the inserts. They do not give you the full range of adverse effects. And then we insulate them from liability or make it extremely difficult for patients to recover if they are injured. There seem to be a lot of inherent conflicts of interest.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned that, because I kind of forget that sometimes. But and I have heard that newspapers and news stations will think twice about running stories that are critical of drugs, because a lot of the times they're receiving a lot of money to advertise for the drugs on the channel. So they're going to look at that they're going to say, what do I have to lose by airing this? And like you said, with the politicians, if I'm not going to be drug friendly, I'm going to risk maybe some of the donations that are coming my way from these groups and these lobbyists.
And I don't know, in your experience at the FDA, for example, especially coming out of residency in 2019, basically leading straight into the pandemic, do you have any opinion on vaccines, or even specifically the childhood vaccine schedules?
I don't really. I mean, the only opinion I have on it is I don't think people should be forced to take them. And I think that is just an absolute disaster. And anecdotally, it's just so unscientific. I mean, I got the shot, and man, I feel like I've had COVID like 5 or 6 times, and so has everyone else. So I don't really know if it works. It doesn't feel like it does, and I know that it is causing a whole bunch of cardiac problems and neurological problems. And to force someone to have a vaccine that was rushed through, that has clear side effects and questionable efficacy, I'm just like, that's terrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially they were forcing people to enroll themselves and their children in the clinical trials of a new technology, right? A new vaccine technology for a new virus that no one had seen before. So you mentioned, the Nazi Germany, the war criminal trials in Nuremberg. I mean, it implicated so many things, so many moral, ethical issues, and legal issues, just on so many levels. How can we find, you mentioned functional doctors, as we're trying, now that we kind of understand that this is the playing field, with a lot of inherent conflicts of interest, I try and live a pretty holistic life, healthy lifestyle, eat good, nutritious foods, drink a lot of water. But even that is hard. I mean, you see them, it costs more money to eat food that doesn't have chemicals sprayed on it, as opposed to, non-organic foods. I mean, where do we find providers or that we can trust, people, medical professionals that we can trust, whether in a clinic or at a doctor's office or maybe online? Maybe there's a community that you know about that we can tap into.
Yeah, so I'm really good with the mental health stuff, and so I would say go to my website taperclinic.com, and if you go to the Contact Us section, I have directories to psychiatrists that are listed on websites that kind of focus on helping people come off medications. And you might not even want to come off meds. You may just want to work with someone who's going to be judicious about prescribing. That's where I would go. So if I had a mental health problem, I would go to that directory on my website and I'd find one of those doctors. Because if they're interested in taking people off meds, you better believe they'd be cautious about putting people on them and managing them carefully.
Great.
For the functional medicine stuff, I think the Institute of Functional Medicine is probably like the premier organization that's really interested in, getting to the root cause of medical problems. And I'm sure they would have directories of providers, but it's not an area I'm as deeply familiar with.
And as we are wrapping up a little bit, or getting close to our time together, the end of our time together, do you think that there is hope for medicine in America, or that we simply have to find alternatives and maybe create like a separate system of trusted professionals that we can, rely on having our best interests at heart?
Yeah, it's so two-sided, right? Because there's some things that happen in medicine that are incredible. I think some of the surgical advances, some of them are life-saving and excellent. The things that really get to the root cause of what's going on. And so it's really hopeful in some senses, but anything that I think is based on like problems of living, where it's like obesity, difficulty eating, mental health problems, gosh, we're doing a really poor job there. And I think there's tremendous opportunity for people who want to step up and move into those spaces and actually try and rehabilitate people by understanding them and motivating them and helping them. And so I think in those areas, you may be able to find maybe some folks a little bit like me who have decided that they want to take on some of these harder problems and help people fix them. But I don't feel very hopeful for the current medical system all of a sudden finding great ways to help people's mental health or help them lose weight or stop diabetes. I think they're just going to kind of just keep on giving them meds.
Yeah. And also, as you were saying that, and you're describing, surgeries in certain instances where going to, mainstream Western doctor would be, is prudent. I just saw a tweet the other day about UCLA and their admissions, and they've been focusing very much on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.